What's up, Taiwan? I'm Liao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. The U.S.'s ambassador to China says President Donald Trump has made clear to Beijing that Washington won't change its policy toward Taiwan.
With regard to Taiwan, he has said very clearly, we're not changing the one China policy. We are going to adhere to the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 communiques, and the 6 assurances that were done under Reagan. Look, this has served the world very well. We don't want any coercion, but we want this resolved peacefully.
Perdue also said in his interview with CNBC that the U.S. wants to lower tensions with China and stabilize the relationship. It comes as Trump is expected to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping during this year's APEC summit in South Korea. In a separate interview, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent accused China of using American soybean farmers as pawns in the negotiations. He said there will be news about U.S.-China trade talks on Tuesday. A former U.S. defense official has urged the Trump administration to help Taiwan boost its self-defense capabilities, saying it's tied to Washington's own interests.
One of the most important things the United States can do to protect its own interests in the Indo-Pacific and thereby globally is to help Taiwan strengthen its own defenses and resilience. So Taiwan has a major role here.
Eli Ratner previously served as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Affairs. His comments come after a recent Washington Post report that Trump rejected a military aid package to Taiwan due to his trade negotiations with China. Taiwan Foreign Minister Ling Jialong, speaking at the same event via video, emphasized that Taiwan is stepping up its defense effort as shown in its military budget for next year.
The 2026 government budget proposal earmarked a record 3.32% of GDP for defense-related spending. This number will steadily rise as Taiwan aims for 5% of GDP by 2030.
Ling stressed that Taiwan-U.S. security ties are mutually beneficial. Trump's reported denial of military aid to Taiwan has raised concerns about a possible U.S. policy shift. It also comes at a time when Trump has yet to announce any arms sales packages to the country during his second term. To learn more about what this could mean for Taiwan, host Wen-Shi Yu of DC Insiders sat down with Clark Cooper, former Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs.
What is your view on this potential change of policy?
I mean, we've already referenced the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act. That is the ironclad foundation of United States relationship with Taiwan and the whole basis for arms sales and defense tech transfers to Taipei from Washington. So if we look at it more of I would say like a tactical recalibration versus a policy shift or a strategic shift. The key word here is, if the reporting is true or accurate, it's more of a reflection of a pause. It's not a cessation. And as you mentioned, the $18.6 billion, yes, when I was Assistant Secretary of State, that was the record amount of arms sales to Taipei ever. And that said, there's not a slowing down. I mean, there's a backlog on deliveries, yes. But I would say I would look at this more of a tactical recalibration. I wouldn't say it's a wholesale shift in policy or strategic shift, because again, I go back to that ironclad foundation of the Taiwan Relations Act.
But if you can just help us understand sort of how does it really work?
The Arms Export Control Act, that act is just a little bit older than the Taiwan Relations Act. So we're talking about a piece of legislation that is almost 50 years old, barely amended. Many, including myself, feel like it could be updated and amended. The current administration is actually taking effort to do that. But what it does mean is it provides that statutory framework where the Department of State has the lead. And there are 2 general channels, and Taiwan takes advantage of both. One is FMS, foreign military sales, and that is a government-to-government sales process. And the other one is then DCS, direct commercial sales, and that is the entity like a prime or a contract that would go straight to the customer. Generally different tracks. Some have different advantages than others. FMS advantages is if there's a concern or a question, it's immediately rectified by the central government. However, DCS in general can be a little bit more expedient because it's a direct sale from the commercial entity say to the government.
But it still requires government approval, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in all of that, as I said, you have three general categories. You have these interagency reviews that take place, that presidential prerogative that we started the conversation with, and then Congress has a heavy role. What's in Taiwan's interest is that they're very unique in that across administrations since 1979, they have really solid support across the aisle. And it is highly unusual, especially in this era in the United States, for our country to enjoy and benefit from both parties who are hands clasped essentially in support of Taiwan's defense.
That was Clark Cooper, former Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. You can watch the full interview at an upcoming episode of DC Insiders. Taiwan is getting increasing support from the international community in its challenges to China's claims about UN Resolution 2758. Cadence Quaranto reports.
A wave of lawmakers from Latin America are pushing back against what many say is China's distortion of a key UN resolution passed in 1971, which Beijing says determined Taiwan as a part of China. In a joint statement, those lawmakers from Bolivia, Panama, Paraguay, and Uruguay said that UN Resolution 2758 does not settle China's claims to Taiwan and does not prevent Taiwan's participation in international organizations. They intend to pass resolutions in their respective countries formally declaring this position. This, a major win for Taiwan, which has long been challenging China's claims. That resolution, passed in 1971, transferred China's seat at the UN from the Republic of China, Taiwan's official name, to the People's Republic of China in Beijing. In recent years, China has used that resolution to justify its claims to Taiwan and to keep Taiwan out of the UN. It says any efforts to challenge these claims will fail.
任何挑战联大第2758号决议的言行，都是妄图动摇战后国际秩序的根基，干涉中国内政，结局只能是一败涂地。
Experts say China is clearly manipulating the facts. Taiwan's government has also firmly pushed back, with growing support from other countries. Along with Latin American lawmakers, Sweden's Foreign Affairs Committee also recently rejected China's distortions, according to the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Notably, neither Sweden nor most of the Latin American countries whose lawmakers released this statement have official diplomatic relations with Taiwan, and instead have formal ties with China. Panama cut off relations with Taiwan in 2017. Still, 8 of its lawmakers signed the statement. This wave of support comes just days after China published a position paper detailing its claims about UN Resolution 2758, which saw swift responses from Taiwan's government. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, which handles relations with China, released a statement accusing Beijing of misleading the international community, emphasizing the resolution does not mention Taiwan and does not determine Taiwan's status, while Taiwan's foreign ministry said this.
中国错误诠释联大第2758号决议，用以论证国际已经形成一中原则，不仅是颠倒是非、荒谬至极，更凸显中国意图破坏以规则为基础的国际秩序。
And it appears Taiwan's pushback is no longer falling on deaf ears, as politicians from more countries are speaking up in its favor, urging the international community not to take China's claims at face value. Patrick Chen and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Can Taiwan's industrial cluster model work in other countries? That's the question being asked after officials from Taiwan suggested its science parks could be the path for future U.S. investment as the country seeks a deal to lower U.S. tariffs. Officials tried to ease concerns about how it would affect industry at home, while some in the business community said the model could work abroad. Chris Gorn reports.
Following a trip to the U.S. for trade talks to lower tariffs on Taiwan, Vice Premier Zheng Lijun is proposing a Taiwan model for U.S. investment, with the U.S. government helping to create industrial clusters. Some from Taiwan's business community say it could work.
各方面呢，其实都需要协助。如果这一些方面都规划得很顺利，最好还有类似台湾的科学园区的免税的制度。那一个园区在美国可能会有 竞争力。
Taiwan's science parks offer a one-stop location that provides the infrastructure needed for high-tech industries, as well as tax incentives and other benefits. Officials say sharing the model with allies won't harm it at home.
就好像矽谷很成功，那大家都想要复制矽谷或连接矽谷，那但是也没有听说矽谷因此而被掏空，反而更强大。那所以就是说，我们科学园区的成功的经验分享给友方甚至于跟他们有更好的连接来制造。
The proposed plan comes as U.S. officials suggest a 50-50 chip policy, requiring one chip be made in the U.S. for every chip imported. While some have raised concerns this could move more of Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing offshore, investors aren't deterred. Taiwan's chip giant TSMC, for instance, capped a week-long rally Friday, rising more than 6% since Tuesday to a record-high finish. Regardless of the model, some in Taiwan say it's on the U.S. to reach their chip goals.
他有这个目标，就看他有没有能力做到，如何达到是考验他们的自己的努力了。
Executives here say the model works for Taiwan. The question now is whether the U.S. can deliver the basics that make it work, and whether they are even interested in the effort it will entail. Luffy Li and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's cabinet has passed a draft amendment to increase the post-disaster recovery budget after flooding in Hualien devastated downstream towns. Officials hope this will compensate affected families while offering housing and healthcare subsidies to get them back on their feet. Irene Lin has more.
Thousands of tons of mud and debris have been hauled away from Guangfu. The township in Hualien in eastern Taiwan was flooded after a barrier lake burst its banks upstream. According to an official survey, more than 88% of the cleanup operations are done, and 30% of the streets are cleared. The Environment Ministry says they prepared 6 temporary storage sites for the muddy waste, and these should be enough for now.
已经清出来大概是45000吨哦，那包含了淤泥跟垃圾。当然，我们预估呢，整个垃圾量跟淤泥量可以到8到10万吨，所以现在呢已经进入到第3个暂置场，预计呢可能还会到第4个、第5个。
To make recovery operations run smoother, the cabinet is proposing a higher budget ceiling for a post-disaster recovery bill passed in late August. That bill was passed in response to lasting damage brought by storms and typhoons this summer. They say a $656 million budget increase is necessary for the flood disaster, so the money would not conflict with the recovery needs of other storm-hit areas. If approved by the legislature, the increased budget would allocate over $82 million towards compensating affected families, 40% of which will be dedicated to those whose family members died, are missing, or severely injured, while the rest will go toward agriculture, healthcare, and other subsidies. Authorities say the budget will also help sustain flood prevention as they continue to monitor the lake and maintain the highest alert.
特别条例是涵盖堰塞湖的相关工作所以这次只要修正原来特别条例的上限600亿，那根据这个修正再追加预算，我想就可以来执行相关关于堰塞湖事后的重建工作。
On top of government funds, there has also been a generous influx of private donations.
截至到昨天为止，已经超过了23万多笔的这个捐款，那么金额已经达到了7亿8402万。那么非常谢谢大家的帮忙。那我们会配合下周那么行政院的一站式服务，那么以简化程序、加速发放的方式。
The cabinet says all the funds would go into an official one-stop service platform, where Guangfu locals could apply for subsidies and some missing government documents, as the work of rebuilding continues. Heng Xu and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
And thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we take you to Rio de Janeiro, where the iconic Christ the Redeemer statue is illuminated in pink to raise awareness for breast cancer. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.